Hey guys, it's time to count down my personal favorite films of 2020. 2020 as a whole has been such a strange and weird year. Many of the films that I was most looking forward to just didn't come out due to being delayed or pushed back to 2021. And so that made it hard to really get excited for many of the films I was most looking forward to. And so that's why you haven't seen many 2020 reviews here on the channel. I just didn't have much interest and much drive, but I decided to sit down and watch 2020 films nonetheless so that I could make these final videos at the end of the year as I always do. And so I didn't end up watching as many as I normally do, but I still ended up watching a good amount. I think ultimately, because of many of the films that I was looking forward to didn't come out, I think it made my list ultimately a lot more unique than it has been in previous years. So that is something to think about. So anyway, let's get started and talk about my favorite films of 2020, starting with my honorable mentions. And my honorable mentions are Palm Springs, Mank, I'm Thinking of Ending Things, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, and The Vast of Night. Congratulations to those films, and of those films, I would definitely recommend Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, mostly due to the fact that it is Chadwick Boseman's final performance, and Viola Davis gives a hell of a performance in that film, and also Vast of Night, just due to the fact that it is a low-budget film that is very influential for anybody that wants to be a filmmaker. I was surprised by how much they were able to do on such a small budget and with a film that felt so grand in scale. It's a great little UFO film that I think is really enjoyable and should be studied for anybody that wants to get into film. But anyway, let's get into the list proper, starting with number 10. And at number 10, we have The Outpost. Based off of the true story and book by Jay Tapper, it follows a group of soldiers at a base in Afghanistan where they are up against so many odds, and I adore this film, not necessarily for its script, but for its visceral action and emotion and its realistic portrayal of what it is like on one of these bases. The performances are so good and fantastic in this film. And the final moments of this film are some of the most tense moments that I have felt through this entire year. Definitely check this film out if you haven't. It is fantastic. And at number 9, we have Let Him Go, a contemporary western starring Diane Lane and Kevin Costner. These two give fantastic performances as they are on the hunt to find their grandson. I just love the style of this film, and the acting to boot is absolutely fantastic. And the best thing in the movie, though, besides probably Diane Lane, is Leslie Manville as the villain. She is so conniving and evil and just such a great Western villain. I absolutely adored her. I love this movie. I think it's probably a bit underrated, but I definitely love this. And at number 8, we have Ordinary Love, another Leslie Manville movie, and this one is very different, and her performance is even better. Starring Liam Neeson beside her, this is a love story about two people that are dealing with a huge problem as Liam Neeson's wife ends up having breast cancer, and it is one of the most thought-provoking and beautiful love stories that I have seen this year. I think it is extremely mature in its subject matter. It will make you laugh. It will make you cry. I really adored this film. It is practically a perfect film. At number 7, we have Words on Bathroom Walls. Now, I do not know what it is like to have schizophrenia, but the visual representation of it in this film was visually just beautiful to watch. I loved the acting in this film, and for a story that is, at the most, just a teen romance kind of movie, I was really taken aback by how mature it presented its subject matter, and how invested I was in these characters. Walton Goggins, in particular, is great as the main character's stepdad. This is one of my favorite little performances of the year. I think he's fantastic. I think all the actors do a phenomenal job in this. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Definitely recommend. At number 6, we have The Invisible Man, and I was not expecting to love this film as much as I did, but it just floored me with how it did this modern retelling of this story with fantastic performances and great tension that is really built up through this entire film. I love the direction of this film, but the thing that steals the show is Elizabeth Moss's performance as our main character. She is phenomenal. It's definitely one of my favorite performances of the year. She's also involved in one of the craziest scenes that I've seen this year that just made me so incredibly tense. I love this film so much. At number 5, we have Da 5 Bloods by director Spike Lee. This is a phenomenal film dealing with the effects of the Vietnam War on a group of veterans, and I adored it so much. Delroy Lindo's performance alone is worth watching. He is fantastic. It's definitely one of my favorite performances of the year from a male lead. I love his relationship with the rest of the group, and he definitely has the most change throughout this story. And also it has Chadwick Boseman. It was so emotionally resonant through this film, and thinking about it after his death just made those scenes with him just more impactful. I adored this film. Spike Lee knocked it out of the park. Next one. At number 4, we have Trial of the Chicago 7, which might have the best screenplay of the year. It is directed and written by Aaron Sorkin, so you are in for quite a ride, and I adored this film. Based on a true story, I think this does such a great job of being extremely timely while also being a film that is, about a real historical event from many years ago, but I love the acting. The performances are fantastic. Sacha Baron Cohen, in particular, steals the show. I adored this film. It's got one of my favorite endings of the year. It's definitely a film I think anybody should watch. At number 3, we have Howard, a documentary that I think is kind of being overlooked because it only released on Disney+, but this tells the story of Howard Ashman, the man behind the music for The Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, and Aladdin, and I just absolutely adored this documentary. Howard Ashman is such an important part of my childhood, and he made what I consider to be the greatest Disney song of all time, Part of Your World, and this is just a great love letter to this incredible talent that we lost way too soon, and it's just incredible to watch. I laughed, I cried, and it reminded me a lot of the documentary Won't You Be My Neighbor about Mr. Rogers. I really adored this film. It was definitely for a while my favorite film of the year, but then these next two came along. And at number 2, we have Soul. The more I think about this film, the more I love it. Pete Docter is such a talent when it comes to directing animated films, and he proves himself once again with an extremely mature story that is extremely relatable, with great characters and beautiful, beautiful animation. I love the lessons that are learned in this film. It's got such a grand ending that just really pulled at the heartstrings. I really loved this film, and I think it's yet another fantastic film in Pete Docter's filmography. It's not my personal favorite of his. Inside Out will always be my favorite, I feel like, but this one is very close. And my number 1 favorite film of 2020 is Sound of Metal. I frickin' adored this film, and it has Riz Ahmed's finest performance. I love the story as it is dealing with a heavy metal drummer that is dealing with hearing loss, and it was extremely, extremely emotional. The ride that you go through this movie is one of the greatest things that I've experienced this year. And also, it really hit home for me because my dad also deals with a little bit of hearing loss. I mean, it's not as bad as what's portrayed in this film. My dad can definitely hear, but he's dealt with having to wear hearing aids most of his life. And me and him watched this movie, and my dad just really related to a lot of what was going on in this film. It's just an emotional roller coaster of a film with some of the finest performances I've seen this year, directed and written by the writer of The Place Beyond the Pines. I was thoroughly satisfied with this film. I think it's practically a perfect film, and it has, in my opinion, the greatest ending of any film that I've seen this year. It was so beautiful watching those final moments of the film. It was just extremely thought-provoking and peaceful and calm, and it's really something that's going to stick with me. And that does it for my personal favorite films of 2020. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. What were your personal favorite films of 2020? I want to know. Leave them off in the comment section below. And as we usually end these types of videos on my channel, I want to look back at all the films that I watched during this year and add them all up to see what the end of the year average for 2020 films was. Well, guys, thank you for another amazing year on YouTube. And as always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. And I'll see you guys in the next review.